Offspring inherit one allele from each parent. Key word there that I want you to remember, maybe we'll use this bright green here, is parent, right? So offspring often inherit that one allele from each parent. So you have, right, we each are born, whether we have a relationship or not, right? A mother and a father, okay? So you inherit one allele for each trait from your parents. So let's say in our example in this paragraph, they're going to talk about tallness or shortness. You inherit one allele from your mom, one allele for your dad for each trait. So that determines and shows which trait will come out. So as it says here in this paragraph, sometimes an organism inherits two dominant or two recessive alleles for a trait. When this happens, the organism shows the trait carried by the allele. So for example, if an organism has two alleles for tallness, you get one allele from mom for tallness, one allele from dad for tallness, then it will be tall. If it has two alleles for shortness, so one allele for shortness from mom, one allele for shortness for dad, then you're going to be short. An organism that carries two dominant or two recessive alleles for a given trait is said to be pure for that trait. So for example, if you receive a trait, right, one dominant trait from mom, one dominant trait from dad, so it says you're going to be dominant, right? So if you receive one dominant and one recessive, then that's different, right? You can still have that dominant trait, but you're not going to be pure, you're going to be hybrid. That's what we're going to read about in a minute. So if you receive one recessive allele from mom, one from dad, then you're going to be recessive. So you receive one of each from each parent that are the same, dominant and dominant, you're going to get a dominant trait. You're going to be pure. One recessive from mom, one recessive from dad, you will be recessive trait, which is a pure trait. Paragraph 8. Sometimes offspring inherit two different alleles. So one dominant, one recessive, right? So maybe inherit an allele for tallness from one parent and allele for shortness from the other. In this case, the dominant allele is going to hide the trait of the recessive. Remember, the dominant is always the stronger of the two. It will mask that effect of the other. So an organism that carries both, right, and the key word here, we highlight that, is the word both. Both a dominant and a recessive allele for a trait is going to be hybrid, right? And that's an answer you're going to be looking for today. It will be hybrid, okay? So for example, in some people, right, dominant traits such as curly hair, unattached or free earlobes, brown eye color, widow's peak on the forehead. Some examples of recessive traits: straight hair, attached earlobe, blue eye color, straight hairline on the forehead, right? So you get one of each from each parent, right? Then you're going to be considered hybrid, okay? Paragraph 9. In humans, many observable traits are inherited. Some of these are hair color, hair texture, eye color, shape of your earlobes, skin type, and your height. Traits like height, weight, and the shape of your body and face are the kinds of traits that you inherit, right? So you receive those from your parents, like we've talked about. But they can also be greatly influenced by your environment. So what do we mean by that? Right, so here are some facts that they're discussing. They mean, right, your diet, right, your state of health, and the amount of exercise you get, right, can change your body shape. Okay, so maybe you look very similar to your family member, right? But if you don't exercise, you don't take care of yourself, right, your diet, then you could look quite different, right, than the rest of your family. Exposure to the sun. Okay, that's another one. Exposure to the sun can change the pigments in your skin, so they can make it darker when they tan. The genes you inherit gives you the potential for many traits, but the person you become depends very much on your environment. So meaning you could expose yourself and you receive more sun than someone else and kind of change the pigment of your skin. And then when you have children someday, then that could be very different for your children. Paragraph 10. In humans, It's sometimes difficult to predict some traits like hair and eye color. The reason is that you may have several different genes that control these traits. Here's a question we're going to discuss today. One trait that's controlled by a single gene is called tongue rolling, right? So let's continue with this paragraph and I'll explain. You can either roll your tongue into a U shape or you can't. So if one of your parents has the trait, so if one of your parents can control his or her tongue, right, and make it into a U shape, then you might be able to do that, right? So that might be different for you. So that doesn't have to be controlled by both genes. I encourage you to ask your parents if they can roll their tongue, if you have a relationship with your biological parents. Paragraph 11. Traits are passed down by parents to their offspring. Why do we even study these traits? Well, of course, you want to understand it, but why do scientists do that? So by understanding how traits are passed down from one generation to the next, scientists hope to find cures for many diseases, right? So diseases and disorders, if we understand how they came to be and what happened, then we can hope to find some cures for them.